treat. And she is back again tonight to provide some important information to each one of us about being a woman and the things we may go through. So, whether or not you are a young woman, um, just entering, that middle age area, are you a little bit older? All of you all will be able to learn something from this informative conversation tonight. And why is this important? Because as Black women, or as women in general, but more specifically as Black women, we don't always get the care that we need. And so having someone speak with us, having the opportunity to have this conversation with a medical professional just gives you the tools and the knowledge that you need so that when you go see your medical professional, or should you want to see Lorri Price as a medical professional, you have the tools and resources to be successful and be as healthy as you can be. So I want to thank you on behalf of the Baton Rouge Sigma Alumni Chapter for joining us this evening. I want to thank our Physical and Mental Health Committee, led by Monica McDaniels, for putting this together. And I want to thank Lorri Price for taking the time away from her practice to join us and to provide this information that is useful to each and every one of you. I have to sign off pretty quickly, but I am so happy to welcome you all here. I'm sure I will see the comments after the fact. I'll speak with our members as well as Lorri and Monica later on to find out how it all went. I'll watch the replay because I know it will be there to be watched at any time. So again, thank you and welcome. Monica, I'll turn it over to you.
Happy Wellness Wednesday. I'd like to reintroduce you to Lorri Price and welcome her back to the fold. Lorri is a board certified family nurse practitioner, and she holds a master's of science degree in nursing from the George Washington University. And she also has an MBA from Louisiana State University at Shreveport. She has over 26 years of experience as a nurse, and 12 years of experience as a family nurse practitioner. She brings a broad spectrum of clinical experience from primary care, emergency care, urgent care, retail health, as well as post acute care. So she is the founder currently and CEO of Verme Telehealth, which is a virtual healthcare practice which specializes in metabolic health, hormone care, and medical weight management. So Lorri is passionate about providing evidence-based, holistic, and culturally humble care. And the focus is supporting high achieving individuals such as yourselves, especially our Black and Brown people, and navigating that peri and post menopause. And just for those who are seeking that clarity and that personalized care from a provider. So without any further ado, uh, Miss Lorri Price, welcome again.
Thank you. Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Arnice. I really appreciate you and the Baton Rouge Sigma alumni chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated for having me again for your Wellness Wednesday. And without further ado, I'd like to share my screen so that we can get started and get to learning some more about what our body is trying to tell us. I sent that request. All right, let's see. All right, there we go. All righty. And so can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, very good. All right, so the title of this Wellness Wednesday today is The Hormone Shift, the overlooked changes affecting energy, metabolism, and brain health in women. This again is a little bit about me. Monica shared most of what's on this page in my bio. Again, I will always share that picture as being a part of the team that helped to bring emergency services back to North Baton Rouge. And so I'm really proud of being able to be a part of that team. So as I said, I'll always share that information. Again, as Monica said, I am very passionate about providing culturally competent, inclusive, patient-centered care, including my patients, my wellness clients in shared decision making. This is about your body. You are the expert of your body, and I'm just along for the ride to give you information to allow you to be able to make those informed decisions about your health care. And I'm always about being respectful and providing evidence-based care. Below that, you will see the states that I am licensed in, that I'm able to practice in and see patients in. That's 17 states there. Georgia has been added since the last talk. Um, and so here's what we're going to cover today. Today, we're going to cover some of the most important but often overlooked drivers of energy, metabolism, cognitive clarity, and overall health. We'll talk about progesterone, estrogen, testosterone changes in women, and how these hormones shift long before menopause. And we'll also talk about ferritin and cortisol, which are two of the most commonly missed factors contributing to fatigue, brain fog, weight loss resistance, and decreased performance. We'll also discuss why symptoms can occur even when you've been told your labs are normal, and how proper testing allows us to identify the true underlying patterns so that support can be individualized and targeted. My goal today is to help you understand what's actually happening physiologically so you can make informed decisions about your health based on objective data, not guesswork. Okay. And to understand why this matters so much, we need to first talk about why these hormones are so critical in the first place. And so these hormones regulate nearly every major system in the body. They regulate brain metabolism, sleep quality, inflammation levels, heart health, and metabolic efficiency. And what many people don't realize is that hormone decline does not start at menopause. It actually begins years and sometimes decades earlier. And just by a show of hands or commenting in the chat, how many people know that menopause is just one day? Actual menopause is just one day. Okay. So yeah, so everything leading up to menopause, leading up to that day is considered perimenopause. Premenopausal, your perimenopausal, and the anniversary, which is basically like a birthday. It's one day. It's 1 year after your last period. That is menopause, and then everything after that is considered to be postmenopausal. Okay. And so most of the hormones are not routinely tested. And even when they are tested, they are often not optimized. And so I want us to get used to saying that we need to be optimized instead of just looking at what's normal. Because we're often told that everything is normal, even when we have symptoms, even when symptoms are clearly present. So at the same time, we're living in an environment that is very different from what our bodies were evolved to function in. So every day we are exposed to endocrine disruptors and xenoestrogens, and these are hormone mimicking compounds that's found in things like plastics, our personal care products, food packaging. We're using the microwave a lot to, heat our foods up. It's in pesticides. It's even in our drinking water. And so we have to be careful because we're drinking a lot of water from plastic stuff, and they have a lot of endocrine disruptors in the plastics. And these things, these compounds interfere with our normal hormone signaling. And this can contribute to higher rates of hormone-related cancers, autoimmune disorders. Young girls are entering puberty earlier because of these xenoestrogens and these endocrine disruptors. It's leading to increased infertility, more miscarriage rates, cognitive decline, and an increased antidepressant use. So a lot of times we'll go to our primary care provider, and we'll say, hey, I'm sad, and I don't even know why I'm sad. I don't have necessarily any reason to be sad. We're exposed to a lot of, chronic stress things as, mothers and sisters and, caretakers and all of these things, but nothing to really pinpoint exactly why. And so the thing that has been done is, we'll do in primary care, because I was guilty as well until I learned better, but in primary care, we'll do a survey, or do a questionnaire, a PHQ-9 or a GAD-7, check you for anxiety and depression. And, if you score a certain thing, you're given an anti-anxiety medication, or you're given an antidepressant. Your hormones and things aren't even checked to see if they could possibly be contributing to your symptoms. And this is why I will, frequently you'll hear me say that insurance-based medicine is about detecting disease. It's not about finding out the root cause of what these symptoms are. And these protocols are written to, unfortunately, shorten the amount of time that your provider gets to spend with you. And so it's just easier, unfortunately, to write that prescription for an antidepressant when in all reality, it could be related to a hormonal imbalance that could be addressed by just replacing what your body normally made at a healthy level prior to this decline. And so hormones aren't just about reproduction. Um, Once again, they're about the brain function, about immune function, about metabolic function, and your cellular protection. So when these hormones decline or become imbalanced, symptoms are not random. They are physiological signals, and we have to learn how to listen to what our body is telling us, because it'll start out whispering, subtle little changes, and then it'll start screaming at us basically, and then you have no choice but to listen. Um, and so when we're properly evaluated and supported, we can improve quality of life, protect brain health, protect heart health, and support metabolic function long term. Um, it's also important to understand that not all hormone therapies are the same. Bioidentical hormones are structurally identical to the hormones that our body naturally produces. There are synthetic hormones, and that's another thing that is commonly done when you go in and say you're having certain symptoms like hot flashes, or other things that could be related to a hormonal imbalance. It's common to have a birth control pill written for you to help with those symptoms. But synthetic hormones have structural differences that can interact differently with your receptors in your body. And so that's why individualized evaluation, proper testing, and proper monitoring are critical. And so hormones are not a one size fits all. It must be personalized, and it has to be monitored appropriately. All right. So one of the first hormones, and I think it's actually my favorite hormone, but one of the first hormones to begin declining is progesterone. So progesterone is typically the first hormone that declines, and it declines primarily because ovulation becomes less consistent. It's produced after ovulation during what is called the luteal phase of the menstrual cycle. And the luteal phase is simply the second half of the cycle after you ovulate. And that's when progesterone rises to basically prepare the body for a potential pregnancy. And quite honestly, growing up, I had no idea, even having a period, that we had different phases. It's like you're told that, well, I was told that I should expect to have a period every month. And I was a woman now, and I could get pregnant. Those were the things that I was taught about my menstrual cycle. And so to learn that there were actually two phases, I'm like, wow, okay. And, you know, this is what happens during this phase. I didn't learn that until I went to nurse practitioner school, honestly. So having someone to actually sit down with you and tell you exactly what your body is doing, it it makes a world of difference. And finding someone who's able to do that, like I said, in regular insurance-based medicine, it's kind of hard to do because you're tied, your hands are tied. You have to move just like the organization you work for tells you to move. And if they say, yeah, you have 15 minutes to spend with the patient, that's what you have to do, unfortunately. So, but the luteal phase, if ovulation is inconsistent or absent, then progesterone production decreases. And it plays a critical role in calming the nervous system. It is anti-inflammatory. It supports stress resilience. It's anti-stress. It supports deep restorative sleep, and it balances the effects of estrogen. And so if you're ever told by a provider that you only need estrogen and you still have your uterus, that is incorrect. You definitely need progesterone to balance that estrogen because, and we'll get to that on one of the slides coming up, that estrogen is proliferative. And what it does is it causes overgrowth. It basically causes overgrowth of your endometrium. And if you don't have that progesterone to balance it, it will just continue to grow and grow and grow. You're going to have issues. And so you have to have that progesterone to balance the effects of estrogen. And now I don't say that because estrogen itself is a problem, because it's essential too, but you have to have that progesterone to provide that balance and protect and protection against that overstimulation that can happen with estrogen. Um, when progesterone declines, people often experience anxiety, and so that's one of those things. If you're having anxiety and you can't explain it, you can always ask, "Hey, can we check my hormone levels?" Because if that's the case, then I have an option. You should know that you have an option to use a bioidentical hormone that is made just like your body naturally makes to treat that anxiety. You don't necessarily need an anxiety medication. And so it's okay for you to advocate for yourself and ask that your hormones be checked first, or in addition to starting those types of medications, if that's what you would like to do. But when progesterone is low, it can cause anxiety. It can cause a disruption in your sleep. It causes inflammation, fatigue, and increased stress sensitivity. And from an optimization standpoint, progesterone supports that restorative sleep, your nervous system stability, metabolic efficiency, and thyroid function, even. It also supports brain and heart health when properly optimized. And so, those honestly are two of the biggest things that led me to start taking my hormones, because if I can do something to protect my brain health and my heart health that is bioidentical, that's something that's similar to my body was making in adequate amounts when I was younger, I'm like, yeah, give it to me, because I want to protect those things for as long as I possibly can. Um, from a lab perspective, though, optimal progesterone levels can differ depending on the life stage. In postmenopausal women, we typically want the progesterone levels above 3. In premenopausal women, progesterone levels are ideally measured during the luteal phase. Like I said, that's right after ovulation, because that's when progesterone should be the highest. And that's why timing is important too. So during that phase, the optimal progesterone levels are typically, we want those typically between 10 and 12 for a premenopausal woman. And so interpreting those numbers, getting the symptoms, asking symptoms and tying those symptoms to the numbers is why it's very important for you to have individualized testing. Okay. And now let's talk about estrogen, which is one of the most protective hormones in the body when it's properly balanced, though. And like I said, it's important to have estrogen balance. It plays a critical role in protecting the brain, another major thing about it. Also, bone health, heart health, and metabolic function. Um, I don't know if any of you have known of an elderly person, an elderly woman who has fallen and broken a hip. Typically, it's because, and a lot of people think it's just about vitamin D in bone health, but we talked about that during the last talk. But optimizing estrogen is very important for maintaining strong bones as well. It also supports neurotransmitters that regulate mood, motivation, and cognitive clarity. It helps, as I said, with the bone density and heart health. Um, it must be balanced. And a helpful way to think about estrogen is like thinking about it like it's a fire. Fire is incredibly useful. It provides warmth, energy, function, but if it's not properly contained and balanced, it can become damaging. Estrogen in excess or unopposed by progesterone can become inflammatory and proliferative. Like I said, it causes overgrowth of your endometrium. Um, and so having that progesterone balance is very important, and monitoring is very important. So, when estrogen is deficient, individuals may experience the brain fog, sleep disruption, hot flashes is one of the big ones. And not everybody has hot flashes going through menopause to postmenopause or perimenopause. But hot flashes is a very common one. Some people just experience fatigue, or some just may say, and we kind of joke about it sometimes, like, I walked in this room and I don't even know why I walked in here, or I put my keys down and I don't know where my keys are. So those things could be contributed to inadequate estrogen or a decline in those particular hormones. All right. And research has shown that proper estrogen optimization can significantly support long-term health. It consistently shows that biological estrogen supports brain function, bone health, heart health, and metabolic function when properly prescribed and monitored. But hormones have to be individualized. The goal is optimization, not excess, and not deficiency. Proper monitoring ensures that it's safe, effective, and provides that long-term protection. Now, estradiol, which is also known as E2, that is structurally identical to human estrogen, and it comes in different forms. I typically prescribe topical, whether that's a cream or a patch. Um, some of you may have heard that the black box warning was removed from estrogen because they finally realized that bioidentical HRT did not cause any more risk, especially when compared to synthetic estrogens and contraceptives. There was no more of a risk to strokes or heart attacks or blood clots or breast cancer. It's actually a lot safer. So now let's talk about testosterone, which is often misunderstood, but it is critically important for women. Many people think testosterone is just a male hormone, but testosterone is essential for us as well. It supports muscle mass, metabolic function, insulin sensitivity, also brain health, motivation, and energy. It plays a critical role in maintaining our libido, our vitality, our bone density also, and our physical strength. Testosterone levels begin declining also in early adulthood. And when I say early adulthood, as early as 35, sometimes even in the early 30s. And I know we're mostly talking about women's health, but I just recently had a young male came to me and he was talking about how he just did not have any motivation and felt tired all the time and did his he had asked his primary care as well to check his testosterone, and it was odd that the primary care told him, he was like, I'll check it, but I'm not going to do anything about it. And I'm like, what? Like, why would you tell somebody that? Like, I mean, I was glad he even checked it though, even, having that kind of attitude. But turns out this young man's testosterone was in the low 200s, which falls in that normal range, but it was not optimal for him. And so started him on testosterone injections, and it comes in injections and creams. And most of my ladies I have on creams. They don't want to give themselves shots, which is fine. But and then got his level up to higher normal, and he felt amazing. He feels like himself again. And this young guy's in his early 30s. So that just goes to show you that these levels can decline pretty early, and it's not like a set time for it to happen. Um, some people even, start later than that. Their levels don't decline until they're, 40 or so. So it's individualized, and that's why you shouldn't be ashamed, or you should not hesitate to ask to have your levels checked, just so you know where you are and where you stand. And despite how important testosterone is for women, this one is definitely rarely ever tested for us. I don't think I've ever seen, when I was doing primary care, I never saw any of my patients at that time come through who had their testosterone checked. And like I said, I was also guilty because I was taught on that same model, was that wasn't necessary for women to have it done. And so I'm so thankful that when I learned better, I am able to do better. So yeah.
Lori, there's
Yes.
a question pertaining to testosterone in that vein. Do you know off the top of your head what the normal range of testosterone for women would be?
So for women, so we like it optimal between 3 and 7. That's the optimal level for women. And you have to make sure that it is because most of the labs, so and it's, you can do your total testosterone and free testosterone. So with women, I typically I do both in my panels, but I typically go by optimizing it with the free testosterone. And that, like I said, we want between 3 and 7. And you have to make sure that the measurement is in nanograms per deciliter, because most of the labs do it in picograms per milliliter. And you can convert it, but just know if you look at it and it says 1.6, you have to have of picograms per deciliter, you have to make sure it's converted to nanograms per deciliter to use that 3 to 7 optimal range.
And there was a question about progesterone. Does low progesterone impact menstrual and sexual health?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So when testosterone is optimized, individuals often will report that they have improved metabolic efficiency, improved cognitive clarity, improved strength, improved energy, and just improved overall feeling of wellness. So it has many benefits. It is not about masculinity. Some people think that, oh, if I do testosterone, excuse me, I'm going to bulk up and be all muscular. That's not the case. You can be lean and you can be healthy with healthy muscle mass. Okay.
There's one other testosterone question.
Mhm.
She said you may have mentioned it, but what if your testosterone level is high? What medications can help, and vice versa?
So if testosterone is high, sometimes the overproduction of androgen could mean PCOS. And there are several different treatments for PCOS and androgen excess. Um, One of the most common is they'll put you on birth control pills. Another one is metformin, but honestly, I have found really good results with putting patients on progesterone, actually, for androgen excess. And so it's individualized. So it just depends, and it takes looking at the full picture. Mm, okay.
And question is, would testing be covered by insurance if requested outside of the annual pap smear, I guess, generally speaking?
It depends. Everybody's insurance is different. So, like I said, with insurance-based medicine, a lot of times they're not trying to identify dysfunction. They're going to wait till you unfortunately get sick before they'll cover some things. But it's worth a try. You can always ask your provider, say, "Hey, can you test my hormones?" And some providers are willing to do it. Others just would not even know what to do to manage it. So then instead of them saying that part, they just say no. So, but you can still advocate for yourself and say, "Hey, can you just order it just so I know what they look like if my insurance will cover it?" Yeah. All right. And now we're going to talk about one of the other commonly missed causes of fatigue, which is ferritin. So, ferritin is often overlooked and it contributes to fatigue, also brain fog. It's so much that can affect our brains that is overlooked. And so, we really need to get past this, oh, I'm just getting older, and say, hey, maybe it's something I need to be looking at a little deeper than just, I just turned 55 on Monday. So I'm like, I want to be as sharp as I possibly can for as long as I possibly can. So, so get those tests done, y'all. So ferritin can contribute to brain fog and decrease performance. It reflects stored iron, not circulating iron. Iron is required for oxygen delivery to our tissues, our muscles, and our brain. And without adequate iron stores, oxygen delivery becomes less efficient. So, as I mentioned, this can lead to that fatigue, brain fog, decreased exercise intolerance. It can even lead to hair thinning and feeling winded more easily. So, if you're like walking to the mailbox and you're like, man, I'm getting out of breath just, walking to the mailbox. I used to be able to do that just fine. Ask for your ferritin to be checked, because even if your CBC looks normal, and that's normally what is done with basic labs, your ferritin can still be suboptimal and it can lead to some of those symptoms. So I have a wellness client whose hemoglobin and hematocrit were completely normal. And that's what's in our CBC that they normally look at and say, oh, you're not anemic. And if any other, not any other, but most providers would have looked at her H&H, her hemoglobin and hematocrit, and would have stopped right there and said, everything looks fine. But we tested her ferritin, which is something that I test in my comprehensive panel, and her level was 66. And now that falls in the normal range. But she was saying, when I try to work out, I just get so tired and I don't know why. And but even though that falls in the normal range, optimal ferritin levels are typically, we want those 75 or 80 at least, because that's when we know your brain, your muscles, and everything is getting all of the oxygen that it needs to perform. And that puts you at optimal energy and metabolic function. So with her, I supported her with targeted supplementation and nutritional support. And when we retested her ferritin, it had increased to 104. And so she did. She reported. She was like, I have so much energy now. I'm able to exercise. I don't get winded unless her trainer tries to kill her, is how she says it. But she has had overall improved function and it's noticeable. So that just illustrates why deeper testing is necessary and how standard testing can sometimes miss some underlying causes. So again, optimizing ferritin has a profound effect on energy production and cognitive function, and it can be significant. Um, it plays a critical role in mitochondrial energy production. And so that's at the cellular level. Our mitochondria, we have millions of mitochondria, and they are energy producing structures inside our cells. And without adequate iron, those mitochondria just cannot produce energy efficiently. And so iron is also required for proper thyroid hormone conversion. This means that it directly impacts your metabolism. And so with that, it indirectly affects our weight as well because it affects our metabolism. And so if our ferritin isn't up to par, it's going to slow our metabolism down because it affects our thyroid function. It also affects our body temperature regulation, which also, comes from our thyroid function. And as I said, it improves mental clarity, endurance, and physical performance. And so when it's suboptimal, you just feel tired. You may feel mentally foggy and you feel physically limited, like my wellness client, even when your other labs look normal. And so it should be evaluated independently and not just assumed to be normal based on your CBC. And some of those foods that I encouraged her to eat more of are in that picture. So nuts and avocado, salmon, I think that's liver, broccoli, spinach, all of those things are higher in iron that you can incorporate in your diet, in your meal plan, because I don't like using the word diet. All right. And now we'll talk about cortisol, which is another important regulator of energy, metabolism, and stress response. Cortisol is often referred to as our stress hormone, but it's more accurately the master regulator of energy and survival because cortisol kicks in when it's just trying to keep us alive. But excess cortisol could almost kill you. You don't feel like you're dying because it causes a lot of issues when it is out of whack. It controls our daily energy rhythm, and it's supposed to be highest in the morning to help us wake up, feel alert, and have energy during the day. And so it kind of, goes up and goes down just to help support our energy levels. And it's supposed to gradually decline throughout the day so that you can feel calm enough and fall asleep at night. And so I typically get this as a blood test, and it's drawn early in the morning between 7 and 10 a.m. because that's when it's supposed to be, higher than if we tested it in the evening. And so I start with that usually. And so it's helpful to understand cortisol by thinking about steroid medication. So if you've ever had to get or ever got a steroid injection, whether that was a shot or a joint injection, we typically will warn you that you may feel a little jittery, you may feel wired, you may feel restless, have trouble sleeping. And so cortisol works similarly to steroids. And when it's too high, especially at the wrong times, you can feel wired. You may wake up at 2, 3, or 4 in the morning and not be able to fall back to sleep. That's because it's higher at the time it's supposed to be lower so that you could be sleeping. You may feel tired but unable to fully rest. It may be, some sleep that's disturbed. You're able to go back to sleep, but it's just not restful sleep. And also, if you're a diabetic, you've been told not to get steroids or to at least monitor your blood sugars because steroids cause your blood sugars to be higher. And so cortisol does the same. It directly impacts your blood sugar regulation. Um, when cortisol is elevated, your blood sugar increases, and it also contributes to insulin resistance and metabolic dysfunction. Cortisol is another hormone that directly impacts thyroid function. When it's elevated, it suppresses thyroid activity, and that slows metabolism. And so, if you have known anyone who is on chronic use or had chronic use of steroids, they usually are going to gain weight. And the same thing with cortisol. It contributes to fat storage and especially abdominal fat. So if you have that belly fat that just won't go anywhere, it could be because your cortisol rhythm is off. So all of these things could be from dysregulated cortisol. Additionally, and I work PRN in an urgent care, and so I have patients coming in besides demanding antibiotics. They'll come in demanding steroid injections because they do. They make you feel better faster. It boosts your immune system and help you recover. But I also tell them the risk of getting too many steroids is that it can negatively impact your immune function. It weakens your immune system and your immune resilience, and it increases your vulnerability to illness. And so I will typically tell patients, one or two steroid regimens a year if you just really need them, definitely not more than three in a year's time, because then that starts to cause all kinds of problems. It causes GI upset, brittle bones, all of these things. And if your cortisol is chronically elevated, it can do the same thing. It can also reduce your immune system, the way your immune system responds. It also interacts directly with estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone because all of these systems are interconnected. They're all connected. Um, so yeah, so again, it disrupts your metabolic function, your sleep quality, energy production, and your hormone balance. And that's why cortisol has to be evaluated when symptoms are present.
Quick question about cortisol and
Mhm,
testing. It looks like you're about to get into that.
mhm.
But her question is, are cortisol levels something you recommend we should request during our annual checkups, or how often should we check this level?
If you're having any of those symptoms, I would request it. Yeah, definitely. It's a part of my comprehensive metabolic panel, hormonal and metabolic panel, that I get the blood test. And like I said, and on this slide here, that's just a snapshot. It's just a snapshot in time, just like if you get an EKG, that is a snapshot right then and there. If deeper testing is needed, then I order what's called a Dutch test because cortisol is rhythm based, but that blood serum AM cortisol helps me to determine because I had a client recently so we want that morning cortisol to be around 10 or so, a little higher than 10, at least 10. Well, I had a client recently, I did hers and it was 3.3. So I'm like, in the morning, it's supposed to be higher because, like I said, it helps with your energy to help with you to wake you up, get you moving throughout the day. So, of course, I wanted at least 10. So I was concerned that she had some type of adrenal dysfunction. And so I ended up sending her to a specialist to get more testing because that was just too low for me to even say, okay, well, let's, spend this money to do the Dutch test, which the Dutch test is it can be pretty expensive. And so that's why I start with the serum cortisol. So advanced testing is done with this Dutch test, and that is done with saliva and urine. And so what happens is you collect the saliva or urine samples during specific intervals throughout the day, and it will tell us whether it's elevated when it should be low or if it's low when it should be high. So that helps to identify adrenal dysfunction too. And so the adrenals are glands that sit on top of the kidneys, and they're responsible for producing cortisol. And when adrenal function becomes dysregulated, you can have, higher blood pressure, and all these other symptoms. Your energy is going to be off, your metabolism, your sleep, all of that stuff is going to be affected. And so advanced testing can allow us to identify these patterns and support individuals accordingly. All right. And that brings us to one of the most important questions. Why are these issues so commonly missed? And that is because standard lab testing is definitely designed to detect disease. It's not designed to detect early dysfunction or suboptimal physiology. This means individuals can experience significant symptoms a long time before their labs fall outside of that standard reference range. And because hormone decline begins years before menopause, that's also a reason, because some providers are just like, oh, you're too young for that to be going on. And that's not the case, with a lot of people. So just because you're 30 or even 60 doesn't mean your hormones or these other markers are optimized, okay? Ferritin can be suboptimal long before anemia develops. Cortisol dysregulation can occur long before other abnormalities appear on standard testing. And symptoms are often dismissed because labs fall within those broad population ranges. And as I said before, those ranges are built on the population in that area, and it does not necessarily apply to you. What's normal for somebody else does not mean that is optimal for you, and that is what you should be aiming for, being optimal and being in those optimal ranges. Because optimal ranges literally are where our body functions more efficiently, and that's where we feel our best, and that's what we are trying to get to. And so proper testing definitely provides clarity, and it allows us to identify patterns contributing to fatigue, brain fog, metabolic resistance, and decreased resilience. And testing also allows us to move from guessing to knowing. So we want to test. We don't want to guess. And don't let providers gaslight you into thinking you're being unreasonable to ask, for these labs to be done, because it definitely allows you to make those informed decisions based on that objective data. Okay. And this is exactly why I created the Hormone and Metabolic Clarity Panel. So if you're ready to understand what's actually happening in your body, I've made this process accessible. I'm offering my Hormone and Metabolic Clarity Panel, which is a comprehensive functional lab panel designed to identify root causes of fatigue, brain fog, weight resistance, and metabolic dysfunction. This panel allows you to identify patterns that standard testing often misses. It provides objective data so you can understand exactly what your body needs. And it is $297. It also includes access to my Clarity member portal, but that is totally independent of seeing me personally. So that Clarity member portal is where I've recorded educational videos which explain how to interpret patterns that are seen in metabolic and hormone testing, and it gives you the knowledge to understand your results. And there is absolutely no obligation to work with me. It's about providing access to information. So after the January Wellness Wednesday, many people reached out to me and asked if they could access the lab panel directly, even if they couldn't afford at the moment to work with me clinically. And I'm like, sure, I'm gonna figure out how to make this happen. So I partnered with LabCorp to make the panel accessible, excuse me. So you can order the panel, complete the labs locally at LabCorp, and use the results however you choose. You can take them to your primary care provider. You can use them for your own knowledge. It's about giving you access to the data, because you deserve to understand what's happening in your body. So it's not about me gatekeeping this information, just because you don't want to, or you are unable to work with me at this point. I want to make sure that you have access to the lab panel where you can order the labs, and then go get the lab test done, and then look at those videos that I've recorded in my panel. I mean, in my Clarity portal.
If you would, tech team, drop that link in the chat so that our attendees can click on it.
Yeah. So they're providing the link, but that's also a QR code if you want to scan that. And once again, the panel allows you to identify hidden metabolic and hormonal patterns. It allows you to understand why your symptoms are happening, and it gives you the objective data so that you can, either, like I said, take it to your primary care provider, watch those videos, and then be able to have better questions for you to ask of your primary care provider. But you have that data that you will have in your hand. And it just gives you the opportunity to take that first step to being able to have more clarity, restore your energy, and understand your metabolic and hormone function.
Yeah, one thing I think we've been sensitized to is that when we talk about anything outside of what the doctor normally does is, you know, insurance won't pay for that.
Yeah.
And we've kind of conditioned ourselves to just limit ourselves to what insurance will pay for, even before we know what the price would be if we ask for that added value. So I think even with advocating for ourselves, contacting our insurance providers and saying, how much would it cost, if
Mm-hmm.
I, requested this test, so that the physician or provider would be more inclined to go ahead and schedule the test.
Right.
The second thing about it is you talked about timing in certain tests. With
Mm-hmm.
all of the lab work I've had, other than fasting for blood sugar, results, I don't think I've ever been instructed for a particular time frame for a blood test.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking either the provider is not, aware,
Mm-hmm.
or they just, they're just not inclined to go through the motions to do what needs to be done to properly um, evaluate your symptoms.
Yeah. Yeah. I can say, like I said, from working primary care, and I did my best to give my patients all the time that I could. But as I said last time, when you have administration saying, hey, you got 30 patients to see today in this 8-hour day,
Mhm.
you get in and get it done, because if you don't, then we got some other people who want to come in here and do this job. So
Yeah.
that is held over our head a lot in primary care. And so that's why I'm saying it, I'm not blaming the primary care providers. It really is the organizations, because they're trying to
Mhm.
make money, which I understand they're a business, but it's not patient-centered care. I wish they stopped using that, because it's not patient-centered.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
all about them making the money. So yeah.
Yeah. Question about getting the panel. Is the panel FSA approved?
Yes. So to pay for your panel, you can use FSA, HSA. I've actually had some people using Zip and Klarna to pay for it as well. So yeah. So yeah. So
If hormone decline can start years before menopause, how do you determine when someone really needs support versus when it's appropriate to just monitor?
if your levels are not optimized, you need support. Even if you're 25, even if you're 75, it's not too early and it's not too late. That is just like with someone. So I remember mentioning this before. I don't know if it was in this talk, but so insulin is also a hormone, but there's never any pushback besides people who just don't want to give themselves shots. But if you're diabetic and you're told you need insulin, which is a hormone, to keep you as healthy as possible, you're going to probably opt to do that insulin. It's the same thing with these other hormones. If your body is not making that hormone at adequate levels for you to be as healthy as possible, to protect your brain, to protect your heart, for you to sleep better, for you to have your energy, it should be replaced. And that's what HRT, bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, is for, because that is more like your hormones that your body makes. So yes, it's always your decision, but my recommendation, if it's going to protect you from developing these chronic diseases and protect your bone health and all of these other things, if that's what you want to do, I recommend doing it.
So with the bioidentical options we have, we can be prescribed the bioidentical hormones, and our menopause experience will still run its course until the very end. Am I correct?
So,
Oh,
oh yeah. So your postmenopausal state,
yes.
oh yeah, you're going to be
Oh, yeah.
postmenopausal. Yeah,
Yeah.
but if you optimize your hormones,
Hmm.
then it's unlikely that you're going to have those symptoms that are associated
Hmm.
with not being optimized, with that decline.
Hmm.
So believe me, from experience, everything improves.
Okay.
Everything
Okay.
improves. So yes.
Let's see. So there were just some comments about some of our attendees having to change doctors and advocate for themselves. So this question says, do you have a recommendation for an overall multiple vitamin to use daily to assist with the premenopausal symptoms?
No, I don't have any recommendations for any vitamins. So, but I do lab guided care. And so that's why I don't give like blanketed advice about those kinds of things, because I check vitamin D, I check vitamin B12 and folate. I check these things and I recommend vitamin supplementation based on these things. And I use nutraceutical grade vitamins, as I discussed last time. Some of these over the counter ones have way more things in them than you need, like sugar, and other things that, just is working against you. So I don't have any in particular. I do have ones that I use from, like I said, the nutraceutical grade companies that I order from.
Okay. Tech team, if you would drop the eval in the chat for me, that would be great. Are there any other questions? We got about 2 minutes left.
Thank you all. I want to thank everybody for being here today. I hope this information helped you understand how profoundly important hormones, ferritin, and cortisol impact. It impacts your energy, your metabolism, and your overall health, and that your symptoms aren't random. Um, your physiology follows patterns. You just have to listen to your body, and get somebody who is going to listen to you. Because when you understand these patterns, you can make these informed decisions. If we don't know, then we can't do anything about it. And so, advocating for yourself, asking those questions, getting the information, all of that is where clarity begins. And that is most important.
Well, we thank you all for joining us tonight. We do have a short evaluation. If you take a few moments to let us know or give us some feedback. Let us know what future topics you'd like us to share with you. If you'd like to review this particular broadcast again, you can download it from the Baton Rouge Sigma Alumni Chapter's YouTube page, and you can also just watch the rebroadcast on Facebook as well. Thank you so much, Lorri, for
Thank
your
you for
wisdom
having me again.
and for picking your brain. We definitely appreciate it. We are in these circles and conversations all the time talking about brain fog and personal showers and personal summers and all those different things. So thank you for giving us a little bit of guidance and also giving us the olive branch for taking advantage of getting those lab values through you to be better informed about our reproductive health.
Yes, thank you.
So this ends our Wellness Wednesday for the month of February. Happy Wellness Wednesday again. And remember that you are the priority in your health and advocate. Have a great night.